This is TWiT. I did finally get the MacBook Air 2020, by the way. I got it yesterday.
Oh, nice.
The keyboard is much improved, usable.
Yeah.
Sweet.
It's not as noisy.
Yeah, it doesn't stub my fingers when I try to type. What else? You put out your 1 month review on this is actually on iMore, because you still do stuff for them. What's your general take on it? You happy with it? Is it your full-time MacBook or what?
No. I mean, like, if I didn't have to do video, I would be very, very happy with it. It's so light. Like, traditionally, I was happy with it because I could travel everywhere, coffee shops, briefings, all those things, and it was so light and so easy. And now it's like I can take it from the sofa to the bedroom to the desk, and it's so like this is how I've adapted. But I need to use Final Cut, and I was actually really surprised because I still call them Core M because I don't like Intel rebranding them as big boy chips. But I was surprised because the first generation, the ones in the the first 12-inch, they would choke on 4K really, really hard. And I don't believe that, like, this is not a pro computer. Nobody should assume that this is a way to get a pro computer for, like, in a light, cheap body. And I think a lot of people, especially early on, made that mistake and got upset that it wouldn't do like 8K Final Cut Pro without ramping down the processor. So it can do it. It can do 4K video, but it takes like 2.5 times longer to export than my MacBook Pro does, and that's not a good use case for me. But if you aren't doing anything like heavy pro work, it's really good. I recorded all from 2015 to 2020, all the different keyboard generations and what they sounded like, all the different cameras and what they look like, because the camera's still, for a company that makes the iPhone camera, the Mac cameras are just not in an acceptable place. And I got Ian Cuttress from Adantech to actually explain to YouTube what thermal ramping is and what thermal ramping isn't, and what the expectation is for these class of chipsets. So if you are looking for a Mac that is like, if you don't like iPads, you want an actual Mac, but you want it to be super portable, to do all sorts of mainstream computing things, not pro things, it fixes everything that was wrong about the 2018 version and makes it like that really fabulous 2011 version that most of us love.
I'm very happy with it. I got that i7. I got the 16 gigs of RAM and a terabyte hard drive. So it was $2,000, which I'm not happy about. But I've always loved the MacBook Air. It's always been, I think
redefined laptops.
My favorite Mac, yeah. And, and I have an iMac Pro if I need to do video editing. I don't need it. In fact, what I did, because Anthony Nielsen, who does a lot of is like our artsy editor. He does a lot of our fancy editing and graphics and so forth. His MacBook Pro that we bought him last year died. So I said, look, take my i9, the 16-inch, because I'm just going to use this MacBook Air because I don't need all that horsepower. And I think trading horsepower for thin and light, for me, was a perfectly sensible thing to do. It's really a nice package. It's a very comfortable, easy to use.
And because it's got those chips are really good at quick ramp up, so it doesn't feel slow. Like, those apps launch fast.
Not at all.
If you try to do like a quick count, like it feels snappy, which is really nice.
It's
for those
not
chips.
the fast i7. It's a mobile, low power i7.
It's meant to give you instantaneous results. It won't maintain. So this is the thing. If you want stuff to just feel generally snappy, get the MacBook Air. If you need long levels of sustained load, then you really need a Pro.
Rendering or crunching.
Yes, anything that takes a long time is a long contiguous. And even some rendering isn't contiguous. It has highs and lows. But if you really need contiguous workflows, absolutely get the Pro.
Just irks me, though, that they couldn't put the second USB-C port on the other side.
So I asked about that, and it just because of the way buses worked, it makes it a much more complicated machine. And I hate it too because it's on the wrong side for me.
I'm a lefty.
All my power is on the opposite side from that plug, and it's just too far for the cord. I have to it's almost there.
Instead of doing a standalone review, I'm going to do a hands-on tech that compares it to the 2020 Dell XPS 13, which is Dell's version. Much better keyboard, bezel-less screen. It's not a better screen. Apple still does the best LCD screens, but it's a very, very good screen. And it has ports on two sides, which I really like.
Me too.
So fortunately, I don't have to use Windows on it. I put Linux on it immediately. But it'll be an interesting comparison because they're very similar. I mean, this Dell was inspired. The XPS 13 really was inspired by the MacBook Air. And so
and the thing I like is the build quality. It's like my 2011 MacBook. I gave it to one of my siblings, and it is still rock solid. Like it does. Like the screen is old. Like all the things about it, the I/O is older, but it is still like perfect. Yeah. There's no there's no plastic cracking really on it. There's no parts coming out.
It feels like a solid brick of aluminum. The whole thing just feels like the Dell. Not quite that solid. On the other hand, it has a real i7 in it. It has a 2 terabyte hard drive in it. And it was $400 less. So, I think if you want Mac OS, the MacBook Air is a good choice.
Yeah,
that's really the bottom line.
I love what's great about the MacBook Air these days is you can really see how the hardware experience of designing iPads has influenced and improved the Mac, because it really is like if Apple ever decided to make an iPad with a keyboard and a trackpad and a hinge connecting the two, it really wouldn't look much different than what they're selling as the MacBook Air.
Is it an Iris Plus graphics?
Yes,
it is.
Yeah, it is.
So at least it has a fairly. That Intel seems to have done pretty well with the new Iris Plus graphics.
I mean, they're no AMD, but they're doing pretty well. I say as someone who really would like AMD.
If I were writing a newsletter, like if I'd been writing a newsletter for like 30 years, I think the MacBook Air would be just right.
Well, I have to say that when I was writing about it, I was like, finally, I can replace my 2012 MacBook Air.
Exactly.
Because I've been holding on to that machine for so long now, waiting for the keyboard to get fixed.
So you think the keyboard is good enough now? It's still not great, but it's good enough now, right?
That's my hope. I haven't actually set hands on one yet.
Oh, okay.
I was like you. I was like, I'm so close to pushing that order button on the day it came out. Yeah. And I decided against it because it feels like something's going to happen with the low-end MacBook Pro. That the 13 or maybe it'll be a 14, whatever, rumors are saying right now. And I kind of want to see that first. Apple hasn't done a very good job in recent years at differentiating their lines. It's actually getting a little better now, but for a while there was so much overlap between the MacBook and the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro that it was confusing on which one to buy. And so I kind of want to see what happens with the low-end MacBook Pro rev that's probably due out relatively soon. And I'm going to see that, and then I'm going to buy a MacBook Air.
I just love that form factor, and exactly for the reason you mentioned, Renee, because it's solid.
Yeah,
it just feels like it was milled out of aluminum. The whole damn thing, just one solid piece of aluminum. I don't know how they put processors in there. And it's
Johnny told you. Remember, they use water drills to carve out exactly the shape of the.
Exactly.
Let's talk chamfer angles, shall we?
There was some concern. Some people, because they opened it up and they saw that the fan wasn't connected to the heat pipe. So I asked a bunch of different architects from a bunch of different places about that too, and they said that putting the fan on the heat pipe is just a 100% way of knowing that the airflow is going to be there, but it's not necessary. It's just like if you don't want to think about it, that's what you do. But if you model it and you're really confident that your airflow will still work, even if it's not there, then it doesn't change anything. So it just means that Apple is really confident in their airflow modeling.
I haven't noticed any fan noise. What did Ian say about the thermals? They're pretty good.
He said they're basically exactly what Intel. So Intel a couple of years ago changed their messaging on this, and some say it's because they fell behind AMD, and this is what they had to say. But Intel only guarantees base clock speeds now. Turbo is designed for them to increase responsiveness. So they don't expect you to ever get sustained turbo frequencies. They expect those frequencies to ramp up momentarily for like 5 to 15 seconds in order to launch your apps, handle whatever tab you're switching to, do quick processes like in Excel or things like that. And then as it gets hotter, it ramps back. It goes back down to base frequencies to continue on the workload. And that's what they deliver with this.
Perfect. I think that's fine. And you're paying too much attention if you're watching your iStat menu and say, is the CPU? What's going on? I get calls.
If a MacBook Pro does that, it's problematic because you want a Pro to do sustained workloads. But this is not, again, and Walt Mossberg had a wonderful thread on this where it's like every tech reviewer reviews it as if they're using it for their niche tech needs and they forget about the other 95% of humanity.
Yeah, no, and the 16 fixed that perfectly. The 16 inch is a beast. It was really good.
Yes.